All right, welcome to the class. So, today's topic is going to be English spelling. How to spell words in English and why English spelling is so very bad. So, for those of you to stall for time as students show up, English spelling is notably very bad. It is not alphabetic. You cannot look at a word in English, look at how it's spelled, and accurately guess how it will be pronounced. You can get close, but you cannot get 100%. So in this class, we're going to go over some of the common spelling constructions, specifically for vowels, which are some of the most variable sounds in English. And we're going to look at how you can predict them. So I'm going to continue to wait a bit, hopefully for someone to show up. A bit about why English spelling is the way it is because most modern languages, German, French, Japanese, have at some point in recent history had some governing body has modified their spelling to make it standard and modern. This is why in German and French and Japanese and Spanish and Italian, you can normally look at a word and guess accurately how it sounds. In English, however, this never happened. In fact, our spelling used to be accurate about 300 or so years ago, at which point the first dictionaries were written, and spelling has not changed ever since. So you could say that English spelling is not necessarily terrible, it's just far outdated. It's a fossil of a more ancient form of the language. So, I guess we will just get started. Why not? If anyone shows up, hopefully they'll just inform us. So here we have a poem that pretty much illustrates English spelling. I will read it for you all. I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough. Others may stumble, but not you, on hiccup, thorough, slough, slough, and through. Well done, and now you wish perhaps to learn of less familiar traps. So here we can see all these words that end O-U-G-H, but have completely different pronunciations. Uff, oo, ow, o, off, all kinds of things, up. Beware of herd, a dreadful word, that looks like beard and sounds like bird. And dead, it said, like bed, not bead. For goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt. Once again, all those words, all the colored words rhyme. Continuing. Oops. And moth is not a moth in mother, nor both in bother, broth in or brother. And here is not a match for there, nor dear and fear for bear and pear. And then there's does and rows and lose, just look them up, and goose and choose. And cork and work and card and ward, and font and front and word and sword. And do and go and thwart and cart, come, I've hardly made a start. A dreadful language, man alive, I'd learned to speak it when I was 5. And yet to write it, the more I sigh, I'll not learn how till the day I die. So there, as you can see, a lot of words, a lot of different ways to spell them, a lot of different ways to pronounce them, and sometimes words that were spelled the same sound differently, and frequently words that were spelled completely differently sounded exactly the same. So this is the problem with English spelling. Now, I'm going to go over the vowel sounds with you, and just so you know, I'm going to be using some phonetic symbols so that I can refer to the sound as opposed to the spelling. So first up, we have this lowercase I. This is E, as in beat, field, and deed. This is I, as in it, myth, and hinge. This is oo, as in root, flute, or shoe. There we can see a lot of different ways to spell that one. This is as in would, put, could. This is as in proper, heart, watch. This is as in cat, have, transfer. Oh,
Hi,
that student. Hello.
do you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thanks. This is my dog.
Oh, well, hello there.
Don't take notice of it. I mean, it's a barking dog. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, only two of us.
Currently, just the two of us. We'll see if anyone else shows up. So yes, I was just going through the presentation in the hopes that someone would show up.
Yeah.
So what this is over is this is English spelling, which
Yes.
as I believe we discussed before is hard to predict. So what I'm doing right now is I'm introducing some little symbols I'll be using. You don't necessarily have to memorize them, just know when you see them what they are. These symbols represent sounds, not spellings, but sounds. So these are phonetic symbols you'll see in the alphabet. So you can see up there we already have that little lowercase I, that's the sound E. You can see it in words like beat, field, and deed. And you can see also there's several different ways to spell that. Then there's that uppercase, that tiny uppercase I. That's I, as in it, myth, and hinge.
And
Then there's that oo, as in root, flute, or shoe. As in would, put, and could. As in proper, heart, and watch. And as in cat, have, and transfer. And I see we have another student. Hello, Yenny.
Hi, hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Colombia.
Colombia? Well, welcome.
Thank you so much.
As I was just explaining, we're talking about English spelling.
Okay.
So right now I'm introducing these little phonetic sounds, and all you have to know is that when you see these little sounds in the slash marks, I'm referring to sounds, not spelling.
Okay.
So I'll go on and list the remainder. So this little Greek letter epsilon, this is the sound e. You'll find it as in the E in red, the A in ordinary, or the EO in leopard. This upside down E is a schwa. It's a little unpronounced vowel in English. It's like the A in woman, the I in pencil, or the O in author. This sound only appears before R's in American English, and you find it in words like bore, for, and war. You can see it spelled in at least 3 different ways, and we'll see many more as we go on. Upside down V is as in nut, or butter. And then this sound, like an E and an I next to each other, this is A, as in rain, hate, or cafe. AI is I, as in height, kind, or sky. And A and the little thing is ow, as in cow, out, or bow. This is oi, as in coin, boy, or asteroid. And this is O, as in boat, gross, or toe. And I believe that's all of them. Yes.
Excuse me, teacher. Do you have a link of these symbols, of these words?
You know what? Actually, I think I forgot to upload it. I normally upload this thing. If you want to, you can find these symbols online. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I'll write it in the little Verbling chat. These symbols are all from something called the International Phonetic Alphabet, and you can look that up online. And if you look up the if you look up English phonology, you'll normally find these symbols listed under the vowels for Standard American.
Yes.
These vowels change if we're talking about British English or Australian English, but for Standard American, these are the most standard vowels.
Mhm.
So there are a few things that very commonly will affect how vowels are pronounced when you're trying to read them. One is the stress. If you know where the stress falls in a word, the vowels that are not stressed often revert to that schwa sound. So, for example, cord is pronounced with that or sound, cord. But if we make it record, the o becomes a schwa because it's out of the stress position. So, cord, record. Another thing is called R coloring. And this is something that happens in English frequently, which is when an R follows the vowel, it changes its sound. So, for instance, the A in family is a, family, but in the A in farm is ah, farm. So it changes. So normally when you see those R's, those can be signs that this vowel is pronounced differently than it normally is. The other is the silent E. This is a thing in English whenever you see silent E's at the ends of words. Silent E's make the preceding vowel say their name. So if you see an A with a silent E, it's pronounced A. E with a silent E is E. I is I, O is O, and U is U. That little J is pronounced like a Y in phonetics. U. You normally see this written at the end of the word between some consonants. So for examples, we have cub becomes cube, kit becomes kite, and hat becomes hate. Now, yeah, that J is like a Y. And you should be aware that even though these rules are good guidelines, there's always exceptions in English. So just be aware that you'll even be seeing examples in this PowerPoint of these rules not working. So now I want to go through with you guys some of the ways you will pronounce letters when you see them in English and how to predict them. And I want to mention at this point that if you all have any questions or concerns or want me to clarify something, feel free to speak up and ask me questions. Otherwise, it'll basically just be me up here talking. So if you have something to say or something you want clarified, just shout out. Just say something and we'll talk.
Yes. No. The problem is only to remember this. Remember all these rules.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So so a lot of these rules, like I said, they're more guidelines.
Yeah.
So first we have A, just a single A. If you see this, there's pretty much only two sounds it normally makes. A, as in hatchet or cat, or A, as in ache or nation. Now, in fact, the sound A will only ever in English be written with a single A. So while when you see an A, it might make different sounds. If you ever hear an A, if you're wondering how to write the word, if you hear A, you know that has to be spelled with just one A. A. Oh, and there's a silent E up there, making it A, an ache. Now, it also will sometimes be ah or before an R. So, for instance, in the word bard and tar, it's an ah. Or in various, care, or any word ending in airy, it's an Also a silent E there in care. Now, I mentioned that silent E because you can kind of think about this in two tiers. If the word was going to be pronounced when you add that R, it becomes ah. If it was going to be A, when you add that R, it becomes So a silent E in conjunction with an R makes that And as with most words we'll find, it becomes unstressed at the end of a word or when unstressed. So in the word banana, there are two schwa sounds, even though they're all written with an A. Now an A after a W sound, which remember QU is pronounced qua in English with that W, unless it is followed by a K, a G, or an NG, it'll be ah. So want and watch, but not wag. And kind of the reason for this one, which seems odd, is that W makes it an ah, but that K, that G, and that ing sound, they're all made in the same part of your mouth. And that part of your mouth isn't close to where you make the ah sound. It's too up high. So the K, the G, or the NG will basically cancel the W. So you can kind of think about it that way. W makes it an ah, but all those sounds made in that part of your mouth will undo the W's work. Now, if it's followed by an R after a W, it'll be that or sound, that one that only comes next to R's in English, like in words like war and quarry. Some notable exceptions to these rules are the words father, where it's an ah, even though there's no R, and R, where there is an A and a silent E, but it's still ah. So that's all for single A. Then we have AI, which is also sometimes spelled AY. So AI or AY most commonly makes that A sound, as in bait or day. Now notice some common things between this sound and the A of single A. So before I's, just like that A for the A with a silent E becomes an A as in AI also becomes an before an R. And it becomes when unstressed, as in mountain and Britain. Some notable exceptions are said, where it's an sound, even though there's no R, and again, where it's that short that I sound, even though, once again, there's nothing making it do that. And like I said, notice how this compares to the A when spelled with a letter A. Then we have AU or W. The U or the W are sometimes exchangeable. This is almost always going to be pronounced ah, as in taught, lawn, or author. That one's pretty easy. Now we have our E's. E is most commonly pronounced either E, as in she, or meter, or as in better, or get. Before an R in single-syllable roots, it often becomes a schwa, as in clerk and her. However, in roots with more than one syllable, like very or serious, it stays as an or an E. It is not pronounced when at the end of a word, like in starve or discipline. It's almost always a silent E. The one exception to this is if it's a word that comes to English from French or Greek. So recipe, cafe, or Persephone, the Greek goddess of spring, those words all have you pronounce the E. But any native English word will have that silent E at the end. It is always pronounced E before another vowel that is pronounced separately. So in the words create, area, hideous, it's always E, because those two vowels aren't working together. The E and the A are making two separate noises, so it's not Crete, it's create, area, hideous. And when unstressed, it's a schwa, taken, poet. Those are unstressed E's up there as well. EA, this is one of the most common vowel combinations in English. It's most commonly, just like regular E, either E or as in eat, please, bread, or health. It's most commonly a schwa or an E before R, as in earth, learn, beard, or year, and also sometimes as an as in bear or swear. That's not as common, though, but common enough that I felt I should mention it. Some notable exceptions to these rules are the words heart, where it's an ah sound, heart, and great, where it's an A sound, great. Now we have EE. This is always pronounced E. It's one of the only consistent things in English spelling, is that two E's next to each other is pronounced like an E. E. Now we have EY, EI, or EY. Once again, those I's and Y's are more or less interchangeable. Most commonly, this is pronounced as A, as in veil or obey, or E, as in key or seize. You sometimes also see this as I, as in the word height or I. It's always an E after a C. So deceive, ceiling, anytime you see C-E-I or C-E-Y, it's pronounced C. It's pronounced before an R, as in there or air. And it's pronounced when unstressed and not at the end of a word. So in the middle or the beginning of a word, it's it. Foreign, counterfeit. It's E when unstressed and at the end of a word. So monkey, New Jersey, that's E. One notable exception to this is weird. The word weird is in fact weird. Then we have EO. This is a pretty uncommon one, but it appears in a few commonly used words, as in people and leopard, which is why I even put it in here. So in people, it's an E, and in leopard, it's an E. And that's all you really need to know for that one. Then we have EU or EW. Sometimes you'll see an IEU or an IEW. This is the same vowel combination. It's most commonly pronounced U, as in view, or ewe, which is a female sheep. After it's just oo, not you, but oo, after an R, a Y, a sh, a ch, a j, or any consonant plus L. Now that seems like a really weird series of letters, but the reason is because it makes that U sound, but when you're making the R, Y, sh, or y, or j sound, or a L sound, your tongue is already where it is to make that y sound. So the y kind of goes away because your mouth is already there, and it would be too difficult to kind of move your mouth away just to move it back. So that's why it's those sounds. All those sounds are made in roughly the same area. So that's why we use words like jewel or blue, just oo, not you. Now we have the I sounds. Here we most commonly get I, as in silent, kind, or wind, or I, as in give, minute, or wind. And yes, those are both spelled exactly the same. The first one is wind, meaning to twist, as in you wind a clock. The second one is the wind, when the wind blows in the air. Wind, wind. Two different words, pronounced differently, spelled exactly the same. It's a schwa before an R that is at the end of the word or followed by another consonant. So bird or stirrer. It's always E before another vowel that is pronounced separately, just like the letter E. So idiot, alien. Idiot, alien. It's a schwa when unstressed as well, like pencil or typical. Some notable exceptions are machine, where it's an E because of that silent E, and business, where it's not even pronounced. It's not business, it's just business, business. Now we have IE. IE is almost always E. One notable exception to this, friend, where it's F. So now we have O. O is actually the least well-behaved vowel in all of the English. So if you've been kind of frustrated or confused with how the other vowels have been, I apologize, because this one is much worse. O has about 4 standard ways to pronounce it. It can either be an A, as in doc or doctor, an O, as in gross or go, an as in monkey or come, or oo, as in to or lose. It can be all of these things, and it's very difficult to predict which one it will be at which time. You can even see silent E's there, not helping us at all. It is always, however, an or with an R, like for and boring. So O plus R is actually very consistent, unlike O without R, which is inconsistent. And it's a schwa between W's and R's, which is a fairly common place to find an O in English, like word or work. It is also a schwa when unstressed, as in author and eloquent. Some notable exceptions are wolf, woman, and women. And I'll go over that last one, those last two again. Woman, women. So on that one, even though the W-O part of that word stays the same and the man and men part changes, when you say it out loud, it's the opposite. It's always men, woman, women, but one is w, the other is wi. That's just a peculiarity of English. Now we have OA, another very common vowel combination. This is most commonly O, as in boat or loading. Like almost all the O sound, it'll become an OR when there's an R involved. Bore or course. OE. It's E if it's an obviously Greek word, as in phoenix or amoeba. It's an O, as in toe or doe, or an oo, as in canoe or shoe, when at the end of a word. So one notable exception is does. The reason this one is different is because does is really do with a es tagged on the end. It's not really an oe. It just looks like one. Then we have oi, oy. This is almost always going to be pronounced oi, as in boy or coin. In fact, normally when you hear oi, it's almost always spelled one of these two ways. There's some exception, and this is because there's so many borrowed words from French and English, that if you ever see a French word that ends O-I-R, it's pronounced war. So those words at the end are reservoir and noir. Two O's. It's most commonly either going to be oo, as in hoop and food, or oo, as in wood or foot. Like other O's, it's a or when there's R's involved, as in pour and door. Some notable exceptions are blood and flood, where it's a sound. OU or W, when stressed, can be ow, out, oo, as in through, you, as in touch, country, or O, as in no or doe. So you can see this one is almost the exact same as just single O. And unlike its other brothers, it doesn't become or when there's an R. It becomes a schwa, like in courage or journey. It also becomes a schwa. It becomes a schwa when it's unstressed and spelled with that U. This is the one time that spelling actually matters for this UW distinction. So when it's unstressed and spelled with a U, it's a schwa, nervous. When it's unstressed but spelled with a W, it remains O, as in yellow. Some notable exceptions to this, and yes, there are many. Power, acknowledge. Yeah, keep in the O, they almost all become an OR when there's an R involved. Finally, we have U. It most common is utter or flu, U as in mute or January, or as in put or sugar. Now that U distinction, remember that's largely due to the same rules I mentioned earlier. If it's in front of an R, an L, a sh, or a ch, it's mostly going to be just U. In front of other letters, it'll be a U. And it has to do with where you make the sounds in your mouth. And that's actually the end of it. So that's everything for the vowels. Now, does anyone have any questions or things they'd like me to go over or clarify about that?
Okay, thank you.
What was that?
Oh, I'm okay, thank you.
You're okay?
Yeah, I understand everything.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So
yes, we have two exercises.
Wait, oh yeah.
To practice.
Yeah, it's better.
It does help to practice.
We need to practice.
I did actually mean to. I wish I had remembered to. I was going to upload this PowerPoint to the class so you guys could access it when you want. However, you can actually look up some of this information is available online. You can look it up. However, most websites will have it a bit more. It'll be very complex because these rules are very complex, and they're not really consistent. So I can actually show you. Let me bring it up for you on the screen. Some of the. This is the Wikipedia page for English spelling. And as you can see, these are a lot of the same rules that I showed you guys, but more in depth, and some other tricks you can use to predicting them. I don't know if it's very legible for you guys. But these are basically, if you ever want, you can go to this website, and it will tell you more information about English spelling than you ever wanted to hear, even from me. Now, like I said, a lot of the deals with English is that our spelling froze some 300 years ago and then did not update, so it got stuck in an older version of English. So sometimes a thing you can use to guess this is if you know anything about Old English, you can kind of adjust it forward in your mind. But I imagine you guys probably would not have that knowledge, as that's kind of scholarly. So I guess right now, I'll also go through with you now, as you can see on the screen there, these are some of the consonants of English, which are much better behaved than the vowels, but are still a little odd. So one of the more annoying consonants in English is the letter C. The letter C in English is variably an S sound or a K sound. It sometimes goes S and sometimes goes K. The best way to guess is that it is most commonly going to be pronounced an S if it's in front of an E or an I. So if you see a CE or a CI, it's normally a S sound, whereas elsewhere it'll be a K. The same thing is kind of true for the letter G. The letter G is sometimes pronounced G, but sometimes it's pronounced J. And this is commonly, it becomes a J if it's before an E or an I, but it's G everywhere else. If you ever see a double C, this is normally either a K or a X sound. It's a X sound if there's that E or that I, and a K everywhere else. So you kind of think about it, there's two C's, and the one is in front of a C, so it's always going to be a K, but the other might be before an E or an I, so it'll change to an S. So that's why sometimes you see two C's, and it'll be pronounced like an X, whereas sometimes you see two C's and it's just pronounced like a K. CH is another C word that's kind of complicated. It's normally ch. It's normally ch, but in some words, foreign words, it sometimes is different. So if you ever see a word that is an English word that was borrowed from French, then it will be pronounced with a sh. This is why it's a sh in machine, which is a French word, or a cache, which is a French word, or parachute, which we also borrow from the French. So in English, sometimes knowing where words come from can help. If you know any French, that can often actually really help you with your English because we've borrowed so many words from them. Another one that is often complicated in English is the GH sound, or the GH spelling. If you see a GH at the beginning of a word, it's going to be pronounced like a G, as in ghost. But most everywhere else, it's most often going to be silent, except in a set of words like laugh, enough, cough, slough, or sometimes we'll even see hiccup spelled with a GH instead of a P. These words you basically just have to memorize which ones they are. But for the most part, GHs are silent in English. And what this is about is that GH used to make a sound in English. In fact, in most German words that are related to an English word with a GH, there will be a H, which in German is a ch sound. And English used to have that sound as well. But over the years it went away, but our spelling stayed the same. So that's what you can think of as the ch eventually just became nothing. It eroded away completely. J in English is always a j. K is very well behaved. M is very well behaved. PH is always an F, as you may have seen. This is almost always because the word comes from Greek. For some reason in English we always write Greek words with a PH instead of a regular F. And that is most of the complications involved in consonants. Sometimes in different accents, different consonant spellings will do different things. If you ever see a WH, that's normally just a regular W, but in some parts of the English-speaking world, they'll pronounce it hua instead of wa, it's hua. And sometimes WR will be pronounced differently from just R, but for the most part, WR is pronounced like an R. So that's English spelling. Those are my advice for English spelling. Does anyone have any questions or concerns at this point?
Yeah, for example, WH, some people pronounce what does it mean? What does it mean? Which is a common?
What was the question?
WH, for example, what or where or
Yeah.
who? Who is who? But where or what? Sometimes other people pronounce what, where.
Yeah. What this actually used to be is it used to be in older English, it was always that W and WH were two different sounds. One was wa and the other was hua.
Yeah.
Nowadays, most speakers of English just pronounce it wa. However, in some parts of the world, especially in the southern part of the United States, you hear this. In the northern parts of England and Ireland, you'll also hear this. They will still maintain that hua pronunciation. But my recommendation, yeah, you can kind of almost think, even though it's spelled WH, it's kind of pronounced as though it were an H and then a W. My advice, however, is to pronounce it just like it's a W, because that's what how most people will pronounce it.
Yeah, actually, I learned from a Japanese teacher when I started studying English in school.
Mm-hmm.
So he pronounced what?
You pronounce it what? Huh? That's so funny. Yeah, some people do, and it's often actually the source of it's kind of a joke people make nowadays in English when they're about people who are trying too hard to pronounce words properly. They'll start going, "What? Am I saying what?" But yeah, for the most part nowadays, we just say "wa." There's no "wa" and "hua" anymore. It's just "wa."
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to say or any input? Okay, wow. I normally this class I normally have to almost rush this class because I get a lot of questions halfway through. So actually now I have more time than I know what to do with.
Now there are a lot of sound teachers all together. That's very difficult to concentrate, to focus about focus.
Yeah, it's hard to remember all of the roles. It's better.
Yeah, there are what I'm gonna go over the most vital rules, the one that are the most important to remember. My biggest suggestion is that when you're reading and you see an O and any combination of letters, so an OU, OI, OA, whatever, and an R, remember that that's going to be OR. Almost always O's and R's make OR sounds. The other biggest thing is that if you can figure out where the stress is in the word, the unstressed vowels are normally going to be an or some other sound that honestly if you just kind of mumble it, you can normally get away with it, even if you're not 100% correct on the vowel. Because English speakers don't really care about unstressed vowels. So oftentimes, even if you technically pronounce them wrong, English speakers will kind of file it away and not care about it. And some advice for knowing where to put stress in English is that stress normally comes at the start of a word. It's more common at the start of a word than the end of a word. So because we have so many words from Latin and French where the end of the word is stressed, sometimes that happens. But most commonly, it's the start of the word. It's also never going to fall on a syllable that is not part of the core. So if you kind of see that there's a word like writer, you know that it's a writer is someone who writes, and it's right plus So the stress would always be on the right part, because that's the core meaning. It's also like if you see a word like impossible. Oops, I misspelled that actually. It's impossible. The impossible is stressed on the pos part. And the reason is because that im is actually just making it not. That im is a prefix meaning not. So we would never go impossible, it's impossible. And as you can see, all the other vowels kind of stress away. So even if I pronounce them a little wrong, like impossible, it's still, most English speakers would kind of, they would sound a little odd, but they would get it. There's a good chance they wouldn't even correct you.
Yes, excuse me, teacher, but in some words like understand, the stress is going to at the end, no?
In understand, the stress is actually on both. So there's actually stress on both syllables. Sometimes in English, you'll get two words that are stressed.
Yes, two kind of stress.
This is common in compound words, which understand is one of, because it's under and stand. It's also common in words with 4 or more syllables that there will be two stresses. Normally, and then it gets a little complicated because sometimes it's based on how you parse the word, like in words like absent-minded. It's made of 2 words, and both of those words, if you parse them separately, they take the stress regularly. So absent gets its stress on the first syllable, minded gets its stress on the first syllable. Put them together, the stress falls on absent-minded.
In this case, this is going to happen when there is a compound word, no? There is compound word. Yeah.
And sometimes, though, words are just very long, and like photography or photographic, and sometimes they will take double stress, and sometimes they won't. And sadly, that's once again a guess issue. And spelling will never help with that.
Yes, sometimes it depends also if this is a name or a verb, no? It could change, the accent.
Yeah. It can also change if it's a different kind of word. So, for instance, this word is, if it's a noun, it's a contract. But if it's a verb, it's contract.
Verb is contract. Yeah.
Contract.
What could you repeat the difference? Could you repeat the difference, teacher?
Yeah. So what's happening there is that the first word, when it's a noun, like most English words, will take the stress on the first syllable. So con, and then that a kind of gets smaller, so it comes contract. So it comes contract.
In the verb, the accent is going to at the final, no? At the end of the word.
Then when it's the verb, the stress shifts to the end, and it becomes, and that O turns into a schwa, and it becomes contract.
Yeah, contract. Yeah. Can I say generally that it's a general rule when there is a verb, the name, the accent is going to the end of the word or not?
No, sadly, that is actually not a rule. In fact, most times, if you're making a verb out of a noun or the other way around, the pronunciation won't change. if they do change, which a number of them do, and what that will mean is that this word has been around a long time.
Could you make an example of this that where the pronunciation doesn't change with a noun or a verb?
Yes. Let me. You can. Well, this one is only one syllable, so of course it wouldn't change. But you can strike a pose, or you can pose a question. But let me think of a more advanced of if I can think of a word with more. So, oh yeah, monkey. So a monkey is, a little animal that looks like a person.
Yes, an animal. Yes.
And you can use the word, to monkey around, as in meaning like to act silly or act like a monkey. You can monkey around.
Okay.
That way, it stays monkey. Yeah, for the most part, they'll stay the same. They won't switch just because the type of word they are switches. Contract and its fellow words that are like that are unique. For the most part, the reason for that is probably because they came from two different origins and have fused and they used to sound much more different. But over time, they've come to sound more alike.
Yeah.
So that's probably what happened with those words.
So they say the English is unpredictable.
Yeah.
The pronunciation of English.
No, it is not predictable. Sadly, one day maybe, but not as is. And yeah, some other advice is you can kind of group sounds into sound classes. So for instance, so the kind of major sound classes is you have A-type sounds, U-type sounds, and I-type sounds. And I-type sounds tend to be sounds like E, I. A-type sounds tend to be A, A. And the U-type sounds are oo and and Then you also have kind of E and O kind of float between I and A and U. If you could kind of imagine it in a chart, it would kind of look like this. Typing into the chat, where you have E on one, where you have I on one side, U on the other side, and A in the middle, and E is halfway between I and an A, and O is halfway between A and U. So that's why if you look at the O sounds, O tends to make all the sounds that A and U makes. And
yes. Excuse me if I jump into your speech, but is it possible to find the site where it's possible to practice this apart from you, teacher?
Oh yeah.
To see at words and with the correct pronunciation and to repeat in the same way in order to
I don't know if
to get the right pronunciation.
I don't know if any place on the top of my head that will like a flashcard system, but what you can do is you can go to a lot of dictionaries. I often recommend the Wiktionaries, Wikipedia's dictionary, and I recommend it because if you go to it and look up a word, there will normally be an audio file.
Wiktionary. Excuse me, I'm going to write it because it's very important. Wiktionary.
Yeah, and by the way, this dictionary exists in multiple languages. You don't have to use it in English to look up English words. And in fact, you can see here on the left side, over here, these are all different languages which you can put it in. So you can use it in different languages, even to look up the same words. And when you tend to look up a word, like in English, if we look up the word monkey.
Excuse me, if I have to find this site in Italian, it
will be called the same thing. In fact,
Wiktionary. All is the same name.
Yeah, in fact,
Dictionary. Yeah.
oh, apparently it's not. Apparently, oh, so this is it in Italian.
Diczionario.
Yeah.
Diczionario. Thank you, teacher.
And all I had to do to get that, if you can find the English page, just look here on the left side until you find your language. It'll be written in the language. So when I find down here Chinese is written in Chinese characters.
Yes,
everything's written in their own
we
things.
can hear the sound of the pronunciation, the sound.
And yes, and then if you look up words, for the most part, they'll have right here in their pronunciation section, they'll show you how to pronounce it according to phonetic transcription.
Perfect. Thank you. It's very useful.
Then they will have a play clip. And for instance, this one only has the audio for the United States pronunciation, but sometimes they'll have how it's pronounced in all manner of different accents. Normally, if they only have one, that tends to mean either A, this word is uncommon, or B, this word is pronounced mostly the same in all accents. So, for instance, monkey is pretty much pronounced monkey regardless of whether or not you're in England or Australia or Scotland. It's pretty much always monkey.
Monkey.
So this is this website is actually really good for testing yourself, especially because you can actually, if you want to, you can even go and here I believe is over here on the side, there's an option that says random entry. It'll be there. It'll say something akin to this in any language, and if you just click it, it'll take you to a random entry. Oh, that one's not even in English. That's the only problem with Wiktionary. Sometimes it takes you, sometimes it's not in English.
It's possible to practice.
This is Japanese.
Yeah. So, I don't know if there's a way to make it just give you a random English word, unfortunately.
Akaji.
Yeah. Anjali brought us to, yeah. One thing you can actually do if you're looking for other words to try to pronounce is under here it'll sometimes say rhymes, and it says rhymes unky. If I click this, it'll actually take me to just a list of English words that rhyme.
Can you hear the sound? Can you hear the sound of the word? Can you, when you click on over the word, can you hear the sound?
If you click on this link, you'll hear the sound. If you click on this link, it'll take you to a list of words that rhyme.
Okay.
So this is funky, spunky, junky, hunky.
Okay. The same way. They sound the same way.
Oh. Do we have another question?
No. So in this case, these words are going to sound in the same way, no?
Yeah, and all these words will have the same ending.
Okay.
That's what it means. That's what it means. The rhyme. So in fact, and then you can kind of link. Here's more words that just end in unk.
Yes,
more words.
It's very useful. Yes.
It's often a good thing. It's often a great place to look up words. And sometimes if you find a word and it doesn't have the pronunciation, it'll have links to similar words, and so you can sometimes use that to help guess. It's also nice because if you do want, they often have here in the etymology, this will be the history of the word. So sometimes that can help if you're looking and you're wondering why a word is so weird. Sometimes this will actually explain what it is. Sometimes you'll see, oh, it's French, or oh, it's Greek, or I see.
Yes, very interesting. Yes. I think that's very important. Phonetics is very important in order to understand you, to understand when you are speaking.
Yeah. I think phonetics are very important when you're trying to learn English, especially because our spelling is so unpredictable. But phonetic spelling is always the same. So if you can learn the phonetic spelling for English as an English learner, I feel it can really help you to kind of figure out how things are supposed to sound in your head. Because sometimes it just gets a little, you can kind of build these files where it's like, so it's going to be ooh, or it's like, okay, it's an ah, it's going to be a, or oh, it's an I, it's going to be e, I.
Another thing is that it's always possible that the pronunciation is going to change from one place to another, from the north to the south of the
Oh
America.
yeah, and this is also
Yes,
good because often if you want to
yeah,
know how to pronounce it in other places, in fact, here, let me see if I can get it to give us one where it'll give us in many different ways.
but I think
Well, here it also here it gives us a few alternate options like the New York accent,
mm,
bade, and then but normal English bird.
mm,
But yeah, sometimes it'll give you long lists of them. Um, so yeah, sometimes also if you're looking down, you can see sometimes below it'll give you alternate pronunciations. Like if I look up earlier, we had this word, which had multiple ways. We can see here in English, you can see that here it's wind, as in to blow, and we can see that from here. This is the definition. But maybe we're looking for something different, and you saw it in the other way. If you keep going on, then you'll see this one. This is the verb form, and that's when it's wind and winded. Oh yeah, and down here it'll show you this is the pronunciation for the other form.
mhm.
So sometimes you can look down. Sometimes it's important to remember that if you find it and it seems wrong or the definition doesn't add up, if you keep scrolling down, you'll give you more definitions until you find the right one, and
Mhm.
sometimes alternate pronunciations because as you may have noticed, frequently English words can be spelled the same but pronounced completely differently.
Yeah,
And yeah, and the best recipe for English really is to just practice, to try to read, try to write it is a really good exercise. Trying to write down words in
mm,
English when you hear them. If you can try to speak English and then write down what you said and then compare your spelling, um, it's also it's a good thing to do
yeah.
because
Okay.
that can help you guess better when you see words you've never seen before.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes, especially in books and in fantasy, they'll make up words, and it's always interesting how a lot of words sometimes there will be only people will only have two different ways of pronunciation. Like there's a fantasy series I'm into. I read. This is the name of one of the characters spelled like that, and it's funny that everyone agreed that there were only all the people who read the book they were basically would only pronounce it two ways, either Terezi or Terazai. And for
Mm.
some reason, that was the only ways people would pronounce this word, Terezi or Terazai. So you can see that there clearly are some instinctual ways that English
Yes,
speakers
it's
want to pronounce
important.
words,
It's
but at the
important
same
that you.
times we're weird. Hmm?
The important is that you can understand each other.
Yeah,
This is
barely.
yes, that is
Well,
interesting.
all right. Does anyone have any other questions or things they'd
Uh,
like to ask me about? We're almost out of time.
no, teacher. Yeah, only to practice. Teacher.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All
Thank
right,
you,
well that's the end of
teacher.
class.
Thank
Next
you.
class I'll think of more stuff to add for other reasons. All
Yeah.
Okay.
right.
Thank you, teacher.
See
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Goodbye.
Bye, teacher.
Hello? Hello? Anyone there?